is Zachary, as always, and if you read the title, you know that today we are talking about how Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, or Indy 5, is different from the other Indiana Jones films, different to the type of story, different to the character, different to the storytelling and how they told the story. And yeah, I really just wanted an opportunity to talk about Indiana Jones. Really cool, let's talk about this. Okay. So I think something we can all agree on is this film is a lot faster paced. I would even make the claim, and so would other people, that this is more fast paced than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But this is definitely a faster paced film for the audiences of now, where attention spans are a lot shorter, so something has to constantly be happening. And that's pretty much what happened in this film. Something is always happening. They're always in a certain place. A real globetrotting adventure, I'm pretty sure. They were in, obviously it's a globetrotting adventure. It's an Indiana Jones film, but this one was a little bit different. Well, you read the title. Of course it is. That's my main claim. So, the flashback to 1944, I believe, nothing there. I feel it really started playing in around when they went to 1969. So, what's the first thing I want to cut to is the introduction of the villain, Mads Mikkelsen's villain, Jürgen Voller. So, first they introduce him. Somebody's gonna go get, it's room service, right? And we meet him. And it's a really nice interview. You see him looking out the window, and he turns and he's menacing, okay? And from this, they introduce the villain a lot different than they have in any of the other films. The first one, well, really the first one was introduced in the very beginning, when we saw him come out of the temple. The second one, the villains were pretty much introduced in the first, the first 3 minutes, first 5 minutes. In Last Crusade, the villains were introduced. The real villain was introduced, I'd say maybe 20 minutes in, as, when he was invited to that dinner party, but no. And then even in the fourth one, they were thrown out of the trunk and we're here. And we meet the villain immediately. But here, it actually takes its time with the villain. And now, yes, I know he was in the flashback, but we didn't know he was going to be the main villain at that point in the story. And really, he wasn't at that point. We saw him before, and now we see him here for their storytelling, and really just some simple building of the character, showing that. So I feel even the introduction of the villain was a lot different than the others. And the villain itself was a lot different in the way he was, and everything. And then we cut to the school scene. For once, the villains actually go to the school. And I'm just glad it was when all the kids were out. And even that whole scene in the school was pretty different. We see Indiana Jones trying to call 911. And when we cut to a bloody telephone. That's different on its own. Because not only do we not see Indiana Jones in a city, actively fighting the villains, and the villains are causing murder, committing murder, and that's different itself. It also tried making the villains seem more scummy. With the Nazis in the first three, it didn't have to make them look scummy, because the Nazis, they're the scum of the earth. They are indescribably horrible. But here, it's just a bunch of people basically in a group that basically trying to push something that doesn't exist. That being, there's a bunch of neo-Nazis that are like, oh, we're gonna follow this thing that disappeared in 1945, in 1969. They really tried pushing the villains further in this film, I felt like, at least. Since we didn't really know what their motive was, they kind of had to push it, and we actually see them fighting around in the city, like Indy riding on a horse through the city. is different. We get to see the city more fleshed out, and it's a completely different city. The pacing here is a lot different. And we get to see how the villains are and how they track Indiana Jones and how it's kind of paced through this entire part of New York is a lot different, so to speak, than it is other times. The way it's paced and everything, the action is about the same, but it's a wee bit different. Apart from that, other parts I can think of are there are so many vehicle scenes, a lot of car chases. With the tuk-tuks, well, I guess you could technically count the horse, but I really don't. You get this. There's a scene like in that scene with the tuk-tuk goes on for like a long time, rather a long time. And then there's a chase with the planes in the sky with Helen on a motorcycle. There's just a lot of car scenes, like a lot of car scenes, which I really does just feel like them trying to push the runtime. And also, Indiana Jones is vastly different in this movie. He takes, so to speak, he takes a seat next to, for Helena to step up. And this is different in the way that they show Indy. He's aging. It really gives him more character depth to show that, he's getting older. He can't do this forever. Unlike in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, when they just show him, he's pretty much invincible, unlike he is in the first three. And I'm not saying there isn't something, and I'm not saying he could have, and I'm not saying he's like, whatever, but I think you basically get the point. The character's a lot more fleshed out, or not fleshed out, but the character is really shown from a more down-to-earth perspective in this movie. And also the way that the ending takes place. They attempt to go back in time on a plane. When they try going back in time on a plane, it's different because in the other ones, they're in this one place, and the villains all die, and Indy's there to escape. Here, on the other hand, the villains are in this moving plane. Indy is injured. And everything is falling apart around them. And so instead of this big thing where the villains die, the villains just realize that they're all going to die, and their plans are crumbling around them, and you see the defeat on their face. And Indy is like, well, he's pretty much just rescued. Pretty much. But, apart from that, it's a different thing. We get to see them on this plane, and it's a different environment. We never actually get to see Indy in a different time. Like, getting to see him go back in time to actually interact with Archimedes, that was so cool. It was surreal, kind of, first time watching it. So yeah, guys, if you just think this is defending Indy 5, technically you could call this but I don't know, I just wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about it for a little bit. If you all enjoyed this video or any of my other content, please consider subscribing. I'll see